So, hi everyone, a very good evening, all of you, and welcome to the YouTube channel of Get Set Law by IMS. I will be taking this session in the start for our All India Open SimCLAT, which was titled as All India Open SimCLAT 18. So, uh, before heading forward, I'll do a just a tech check and then we'll going forward. Okay. Can I have a confirmation from all the participants right now that they are able to hear me properly? Yeah, hi Netra, good evening. Okay, perfect. So I'm clearly audible and visible. Thank you. Thank you so much for the confirmation. Once again, a very good evening, all of you. So, guys, me with along with the other mentors, I'm going to take up a deep but a very crisp analysis of all the sections. Before heading that, I'll be taking up the overall analysis of this SimCLAT 18, that is an All India Open Mock. So as you can see it on the screen, that how we have bifurcated all the sections, the difficulty level, the total number of questions, and then the good attempts and the good score. Okay. So as you can see, the legal reasoning portion was a doable section. I'm going to take it up to that. It was a doable session where a good score was coming around 26 to 27. That means somewhere students could have attempted the entire section in time. But when we see logical and English section, somewhere one of the paragraph or few of the questions could have been left. So out of the 24 questions, it was near about 20 to 21. When we move to current affairs, the good attempts have been a bit on the, that means it is more than the average one. Normally we say 18 to 19 is a good attempt, but students could have done it. It is being considered to be a moderate one, not very direct, but somewhere in mid. And when we talk about the quantitative section, again, it is on the easy to moderate side. Okay. That means legal and quantitative was a must do section for the students. In totality, the attempts would have been, if your attempts would have been in range from 99 to 105, 106, that's a good range. And the score has been somewhere around 87 to 92. So I'm going to take up the first section, that is the legal reasoning section. So the first paragraph. Acha, also before ending up the legal reasoning section, I'm going to tell you guys that what should be the sequence of attempting in the legal reasoning, which passage you should have taken. So passage one you should have not taken, rather than you should have taken at the end, because the paragraph framing was directly related with the international law. So anyone who's not very aware or well versed with this law have faced a lot of difficulty related to that. So the level of difficulty for the passage was moderate to difficult. If you see, all the questions were majorly of the moderate range only, because they were not very to the point direct questions. Some inference based questions needed. And that this section, this particular paragraph should have been taken at the end, because in total there were 30 questions, six questions per paragraph, so five passages were there. Okay. Second was a bit easier as compared to the previous one, the passage which is evolution of Indian obscenity. So anyone who was aware of the Ranbir Alabadia case and Samay Rana case related to stand-up comedians, that is what was in contrast with was taken away. Okay. Somewhere on the easy to moderate parts, one question was only easy, the remaining one would have been on the moderate side, because again the inference part was there, factual information was there, it was not very difficult, so that's why it's being considered to be easy to moderate. Next, when we talk about the third paragraph, so now first and second was a bit on the moderate, a difficult side, but now the easy ones. So यहाँ बन गया snatching, theft, robbery, very much direct, already being taught in the class, so it was very easy. So overall paragraph was easy and questions were also quite direct. And over here, the paragraph, the entire paragraph limit was also very less. So that was a very doable and approachable one. Okay. When we talk about paragraph 4, the passage 4, it was again related to minority rights under the Indian Constitution. Again, some provisions were very well known to the students, but majority was not known. So somewhere this particular paragraph had been kept on the moderate side. Again, six questions were there. Two were on the easier side and four were on the moderate side. Reason being, against inference need to be done, because there were few terms कि इस term का उसका inference would have been what meaning. So that is what could be the inference that you think that it's a, I think it could be. So there would be an interpretatory debate between the students. So that is why this have been kept on the moderate side itself. And the last paragraph that is being talking about the passage 5 for tort liability, again, completely easy. It was very direct. So if I talk about over here in this question, there was a fifth question, which was again related with proximate cost, where facts a bit was a bit lengthy. The fact of the question, the fifth one, that's why I've kept it moderate, because thoda sa lengthy tha, the question. So it was near about 100 and 105 words. Normally, question length is majorly from 60 to 80 words. तो इसका थोड़ा ज्यादा था, that's why I've kept it moderate, because उसको पढ़ते time after reading it through we faced a lot of difficulty and we can't like वो थोड़ा घूम जाएंगे हम उन facts में. That is what was the reason. So इसलिए मैं I've kept it on the moderate side. So if I tell you about the sequencing part, कि which paragraph should have been done, so you should have taken passage 3 at the first. When you have read it, you should have taken passage 3, then you should have taken 4, then 5, then 2 and 1. That should be the sequence for your legal reasoning part. And if you have not taken it up that way, you must have drained a lot of time in the first paragraph. And that is what was from my end. So now I'm going to call our quant faculty, Alpesh sir, to take it forward. Okay. So any question, any doubt when you guys have, please drop into the comments or in the chat. I'm monitoring that chat. So you can tell us and let us know. Okay. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone. So let us now look at the QT section of the SimCLAT. Now, if you actually look at the QT section of SimCLAT, this was one of the easiest QT section that you will come across. So first thing that you have to make sure is, please make sure that you spend approximately 15 minutes is what I'm expecting. Minimum 15 to max 20 minutes for your QT section. If you can attempt around in this set around 9 questions, I think your job is done. And I will show you how to attempt those 9 questions also, especially for this SimCLAT. Okay, so let's look at the first QT set. In the first QT set was basically based on workforce distribution in 6 banks. The total number of employees were given to be 500. It was the distribution in the 6 banks was given to us. Okay, another important thing is there was no the numbers were also good numbers, hence this set should have been calculated or should have been solved. Okay, now if you look at the question or this set, as I said, this I have written this set to be easy because there is nothing, you just have 500 employees to be divided among 6 people or 6 banks, and the percentage of each bank is given to me. There is not much calculation involved. However, few questions like question 3, 4, 5, I have written moderate simply because there was additional data given in the question. Okay, so after evaluating all the or after finding all the employees in the bank, you straightforward cannot answer the question like a logical reasoning set. Okay, so there were data introduced in the question. So question number 2 to question number 6, all the 5 questions had some data in it. However, question 2 and question 6 were relatively simpler. It did not involve calculation. And question 3, 4, and 5 had some additional data. So you had to do some more calculation and get the answer. However, when I say that this is moderate, meaning that it is a little calculation oriented rather than being difficult. Okay, so I think this set should have been solved. Let's look at the next set also. The next set is very similar to the first set. It is based on portfolio evaluation of a particular person. So once again, that portfolio total value is given. It is distributed among different categories. You have to find out what is his portfolio value in the various category. This set, why I have written it as moderate, though you can see 4 questions are easy, is because it has too much of calculation. The numbers may not be very straightforward like the previous set. Okay, so hence this set, though, so if initially if you give the division of all the 6 parameters, then what will happen is the first 4 questions you can easily solve thereafter. And hence for the next 2 questions, you will have to do an additional calculation because the questions had some additional data in them. Okay, so once again, even the second set was relatively simpler. However, I would still suggest that the first set is something that you should have solved. the second set would have been time consuming compared to the first set. However, if you spend around 15 to 20 minutes, you could have solved both the questions. Though I think, that would be a little more. So if I have to attempt, let's say, a 9 to 10 questions in this set, I should be looking at solving all the 6 questions from the first set and maybe 3 to 4 questions from the second set. If I do that, I think you would do well in the QT section. Also, there was one more set in the logical reasoning section. Okay, it was based on matrix arrangement. It was based on annual turnover and the city allocation to various people. Another very, very simple, straightforward set. Okay, 6 questions, all were very easy. Correct. You just had to get that diagram. Once you get that diagram, answering questions is just based on that data that you have found out, or the final diagram that you have got. So if you have a logical reasoning set which appeared in the last year CLAT, it did not come in the previous 2 3 years CLAT, but it did came last year. So if you have a logical reasoning set, I think you have to identify and you have to make sure that you attempt this set, because once you get the diagram, answering these 6 questions will hardly take a minute. So you spend around 4 or 5 minutes in getting the set, 1 minute in answering the questions. That means in approximately 5 or 6 minutes, all your 6 questions could be solved. Hence, you should be looking at solving this logical reasoning set also. So this was the analysis of the QT and one set of logical reasoning. Now I would like to ask Gaurav to take ahead with the GK section.
Hello, thank you, sir. So let's start with the analysis of our current affairs and GK session. So we have 5 passages, 6 questions in each passage. Um, 6 questions in each passages, and I'll say that so let's continue with the analysis of this section, current affairs and GK. So we have 5 passages, and I'll say out of these 5 passages, 3 are relatively easy or at a level of easy to moderate. Now, first 3 passages, let's go through the topics of each of the passage. First was related to sustainable development report, which we are currently seeing here. So sustainable development report, this question, and CLAT has previously asked this kind of question in the year 2022 and 23 as well. And some questions related to United Nations, its sustainable development goals, and it has specifically asked the question regarding which sustainable development goal is related to SDG 5, right? So this is one of the most important topics. Now let's go through the questions. Now question 1 only asked ki what is India's ranking in the sustainable development report. It is fairly easy question. It is asking the ranking of India in the Sustainable Development Report. And while we study a particular topic, we have to go in different direction. And let's continue the analysis with regard to the direction of this particular passage. Now, It is a fairly easy question. Question one ranking, no analysis in that. Second question, it asked where the International Conference on Financing for Development is going to be held in. Now, this could be said that it is a little difficult question. We might not be able to go in that direction while reading about the Sustainable Development Goals or Sustainable Development Report. Now, the answer to this question is was Sevilla, Spain. Now, you can include it in your notes. Third question is again fairly easy. Third, fourth, and fifth question, which is 27, 28, and 29 in the our sim test. I'm saying that it is fairly easy question because these three continuous questions are fact based. First is asking which organization releases the Sustainable Development Goal indexes. It is clear that Sustainable Development Solutions Network releases the report and the indexes, the ranking of the countries. And it is fairly easy question when we read this topic, Sustainable Development Goal and report, you should go in this direction as well. Ki which organization releases the report, which organization controls the Sustainable Development Indexes, etc. Now, 28th, a static part of this passage. When were the Sustainable Development Goals officially adopted? In 2015 for the coming 15 years. So, Sustainable Development Goals has to be achieved, whatever may be achieved by 2030. It is also static part of the topic and fairly easy question. 29th, that is fifth question, how many goals are and targets are included in SDG framework? Fairly factual question, 17 goals and say 169 targets, fairly easy. And the last is which commission recommended the sustainable development as an idea? And the answer is Brundtland Commission report. So it could be said that it is a moderate question, but overall the passage where we find that there are four easy questions. So the passage I am saying is easy to moderate, and I hope that those students who have solved the question have got easily five questions right in this passage. Okay, so let's move to second passage. Now, the second passage is related to Axiom Mission 4. Now, if you're when we are preparing for CLAT, and CLAT has this record of including questions related passages related to ISRO space missions, etc. And Axiom Mission 4 is one of the most important missions of ISRO involved. ISRO is involved in this mission, and when you have covered this topic, there are I say that there are five easy questions in this passage. And this passage is relatively very easy compared to the previous one as well. And I say that you might have been able to cover all the six questions if you have covered this topic. Now, what were the six questions? What is the significance of AX4 mission, private human space flights? Now, second is who was the mission commander? Now, the Indian Mr. Subhanshu Shukla was not the mission commander. So I think some of you might have got this question, the answer wrong as well. That was your silly mistake. That must have been the silly mistake. So for question 32, the answer is Peggy Whiston. She was the mission commander. Easy question, factual question. Third, which microscopic organism was sent in Axiom Mission 4? Tardigrades. So it is also very fairly easy question mentioned everywhere whenever you read Axiom Mission 4. Now, 34th question, how does the Axiom Mission 4 contribute to India's Gaganyaan program? It it may be said that it is a moderate question in this passage, but fairly easy by providing hands-on experience in human spaceflight. India is also eyeing towards in the future by 2028, 2030 to to release its own human spaceflight, and that's why this mission will help ISRO India for that future programs. Question 5 and 6. It is a fact about International Space Station that which space agency is not involved in International Space Station, and the answer is ISRO. Sixth question, which private company was awarded contract to develop orbit for vehicle and safely dismantling the ISS? SpaceX. So the six out of six questions, five questions are fairly easy, and this passage was very easy compared to the last one. Let's move to the third passage, Iran-Israel conflict. Now, we have seen that CLAT has included some passages which are related to Israel and Palestine in 2024 question paper, Russia, Ukraine in the previous one. So this kind of topic and any war or any dispute between the countries is there, generally comes in the CLAT question paper. Now, around four question in this passage were easy, were factual. What was the operation name that Israel started against Iran? That was the first question, Operation Rising Lion. Question two, it was mentioned, the answer to the question was mentioned in the passage only, right? The question was, which event in 1979 reshaped Iran's stance toward Israel? It is mentioned there only, the overthrow of Shah's regime in 1979, right? Question number 39, question 3 here. Which strategic maritime passage instability poses a direct threat to India's energy security? While there was conflict going on between Iran and Israel, the Strait of Hormuz was there in the news, and it is fairly easy question. I am saying that it is a moderate question, but if you have covered the topic well, you must have got this question right. Question number 40, which proposed corridor is going to be impacted? India, Middle East, Europe corridor. This IMEC was unveiled in G20 summit in 2023 when it was held in India, right? And Iran-Israel conflict and any conflict in Middle East affects the stability of this corridor. Fairly easy question. Question 40 as well. Question 5. What was the operation name which India conducted to evacuate its nationals from the conflict zone? It was there in the news continuously. We have covered it in magazine. We have covered it in our videos. The operation name was Sindhu. Operation Sindhu. Fairly easy question. And the last question, which we might call difficult in this passage and in the last three passages as well, it talked about the geography, the borders of Middle East. Some of you might have got this question right, some don't, but right, it is a difficult question. Which of the following countries does not share border with Iran? The answer is D, Saudi Arabia. So I say that this passage is around the difficulty of moderate level. Let's move to passage number 4. Revolt of 1857. We have included this passage because there was a shift in trend last year where CLAT included one passage of static GK. Now we have to also cover some important topics from modern history and previous to that as well. That's why this passage, Revolt of 1857, and the whole five passages here reflect the CLAT's question paper of last year, CLAT 25. We have made the question paper of this particular section so similar to CLAT 2025. That's why we have included the static GK question, Revolt of 1857. And I'm saying that this is moderate to difficult level passage. Why? Because some of you might have not covered this topic. So it could be difficult, moderately difficult for you. Now, the questions, where did the revolt of 1857 begin? So, when you start reading some topic like this is one of the easiest question or first fact that you will discover while reading this topic. It is an easy question, but uh, considering the fact that some of you might have not covered the static GK part, that's why I'm saying that it is a moderate level question. Second question, what was the immediate cause of revolt of 1947? The cartridges, the use of greased cartridges, and in these cartridges, the meat, the skin of cows and pig was used. That's why the Muslim and Hindus both came against the Britisher during this revolt. It is an easy question of this revolt, but let's move to next question. The statement question, statement one and statement two, we included facts regarding doctrine of lapse. Fairly easy. Question number fourth of this passage is difficult because we have to match the leader with their regions. But there is a catch to it. If you knew, you all must know that Rani Lakshmi Bai was from Jhansi. So A is connected to 2. Right, now you have to connect, you have eliminated already the option B and option D here. Now A and C, only one could be the answer. You have done it 50-50. Now, search for any other ruler or the leader and connect it with region, and you might know about Bahadur Shah 2. And Bahadur Shah 2 is connected to Delhi. So you know A2 and B3. Now the answer is A. So by eliminating the other options, you might have been able to get the answer to this question right. है ना? Let's move to question number 5. What administrative change occurred in India after 1857 revolt? The power shifted from East India Company to the British Crown. When we cover this topic, revolt of 1857, this is one of the most important fact. And the last is, who was the Governor General of India? If you haven't read this, this might be difficult. This question might be difficult for you. Answer was Lord Canning, right? So this passage is around moderate to difficult level. So we have found that out of the last four passages, these four passages that we have covered, this one is relatively difficult from the last three, right? Let's move to fifth passage, which was about Himalayan brown bear. And I say that its difficulty level is higher than the last four passages because it is scientific. Most of you might not have covered this topic. So the questions are also not on the easier side. Let's see the first question. Himalayan brown bears are typically found at an altitude of. The answer is 3,000 to 5,500 meters. Some might have not got this question, the answer right. 50th question, it is also on the difficult side, moderately difficult. IUCN status of Himalayan brown bear. 51st question, third question, the role of IUCN. And the 51st and 53rd question is connected to IUCN headquarter and role. If you have not covered this organization, you might get this question wrong. 52nd and 54th as well. Specific fact about the national park and the Himalayan brown bear. So these six questions, this you will be able to solve this kind of question when you have particularly covered this topic. Otherwise, the fluke might go wrong, right? So with regards, let's go again through the passages. Passage 1 to 3, Sustainable Development Report, Axiom Mission 4, and Iran-Israel conflict. These three passages are on the easier side or easy to moderate. Now there are 18 questions in first three passages, and I say that if one has gotten around 15 to 16 right in this 18 questions, which was doable. Getting 15 question right, 15 answers right is doable in the first three passages. So let's say 15 to 16 you got in passage 1 to 3. And then the other two passages, passage 4 and 5, revolt of 1857 and the Himalayan brown bear. Out of these 12 questions, if you have got around 5 to 6 right, excluding the negative marking, the score comes around 20, 21, 22. And including negative marking, the score is around 19 or 20. So 19 to 20 marks in this GK section, current affairs section, is achievable. And that's the analysis of current affairs, including general knowledge. I request my other panelists, co-panelist Sanjana Chauhan to take over. Hi, Sanjana.
All right. Hi, Gaurav. Thank you so much. Um, so now I would begin with the analysis of the English language section. All right, we'll focus on the first passage. Now, if I have to talk about the level of difficulty of this passage, I would say it was easy. Not only because the language of the passage was quite easy to understand, no fancy words were thrown, everything was super easy to understand, right? But also the level of questions given was also easy. We had a main idea question, which I have labeled as easy, and then we had some inference based, some direct questions, which also were on the easier side. And then when you take a look at question 4, it was a vocab based question. And I think the word asked was redolent, for which I believe you do require some preparation beforehand. You already need to know what the word redolent means, because in the context in which the word was mentioned, I don't think it was that easy to, assess the meaning of the word. Hence, I've labeled it as easy to moderate. All right. And then there was another inference based question, which was easy to moderate. And then a very easy direct question. So, all in all, this was an easy passage to solve. I think if you were able to just attempt 5 questions, leave one. So you could have just scored 5 marks here, or even getting a 6 is quite possible for this particular passage, right? We will now focus on the next passage, right? All right, so this is an interesting read actually. It was a narrative passage. Generally, most students find navigating narrative passages quite easy. But my problem when I was going through this passage was that it's sort of very difficult to make sense of what the conversation that is being bantered between Miss Bartlett and the other person whose name was Lucy about, right? So if you haven't been able to understand, you were not able to locate it, then perhaps answering some of the questions could have been difficult. Hence, the level of difficulty is easy to moderate. All right, there was a direct question, right, which was very easy, which is, why, the Signora was not really showcased in a positive light, right? Somewhat along those lines, the first question was about, which was directly given in the first paragraph. So it was easy. Then you had two inference-based questions, which were also easy. And then there was a direct question, right? Easy to moderate was the level. There was one question on idioms, and the phrase for which you had to find the corresponding idiom was tactful allusion. Now, why I have labeled this question on idioms as easy to moderate is because if you do not understand what tactful allusion is, then maybe choosing option D would have become slightly tricky, right? So I've labeled it easy to moderate. And then there was another direct question, which was on the easier side only. So on the whole, this passage is easy to moderate. If you're able to score a 5, well and good. I think scoring a 6 is also quite possible, especially for those students who generally tend to read a lot of short stories. So the lesson that you need to internalize is keep on reading short stories, because last year also, and I think in 2024, CLAT did ask a couple of short story based passages in the English language section. All right, so we're trying to include more of these in the mocks. All right. We'll focus on the next passage now, which actually talked about understanding the evolution of a universe. Now, I would say the language of the passage is easy, but the level of difficulty is moderate, because I believe the title based question actually could have really confounded you. There were two options that I'm sure majority of the students must have been really stuck in, right? So title base is moderate. There's a direct question, which again was moderate, and then another inference based question on the moderate level. Then, however, there were two easy questions. One was inference based, and I think one was tone based, where the tone of the author was analytical and inquisitive in nature. So, right off the bat, I think for this particular passage, question 5 was really easy, right? Even if you would not have read the entire passage verbatim, if you would have just skimmed through the passage, maybe ascertaining the tone of the author is easy, right? And then there was another, question on this, which was scratching the surface, is what I remember. How would you use this idiom in the context of some information given in the passage? Easy to moderate. So this also was moderate. Why I'm also labeling this as moderate is because there is a possibility you might have marked some questions wrong here. So here also, if you're able to get a good 4 to 5 questions correct, your job is done. All right. We'll now focus on the next passage, which actually was quite easy to relate, because it started with an anecdote on Father Kun in Brazil. And then it went on to talk about, Gandhian philosophy and its relevance today, right? But again, this is the level of difficulty. We have to talk about the level of difficulty of the questions and the way the options have been framed. That's really moderate, all right? Because there was the first question, which I would suggest, if you were not able to really, solve this correctly, you could have just skipped it. That's okay. The options were really lengthy. It was talking about main thesis slash main idea, but I've also labeled it as moderate or difficult and not just left it at moderate, because the options, the manner in which the options have been worded, that's really tricky, right? So you do need a lot of time to solve question 1. So in this case, if there was anybody who thought it fit to skip the question, I think that's pardonable, right? And then there was an inference based question, which again was of a moderate level. Two easy questions. They were direct questions, hence easy. And I think one of the questions was with respect to the first paragraph only, right? And then there was another inference based question, moderate to difficult. And the last question on this passage, I will label it as a moderate question because again, it was based on idioms. And the problem is that you need to know the meaning of every option mentioned. And the correct option here was, fiddling while Rome burns. Right. So again, you need to have some understanding of idioms. So my request is for the students to keep on practicing as many idioms as possible. You never know when the CLAT consortium might feel like, throwing questions on idioms itself. All right. So broadly speaking, as far as English language is concerned, I think a good attempt rate would be, anywhere from 20 to 21, and a good score will be from 18 to 19. That includes negative marking also. All right. Having said that, we will now focus on the analysis of the logical reasoning section. Passage one, I know, might have seemed a little bit like a curveball because it was decision making oriented. There was this person, Ria, who wanted to set up a bookstore cafe, and then she had these key pointers to keep in mind while deciding on the suitable location, right? This is what entirely the passage was about. I have labeled this as an easy to moderate level passage because for a lot of you, you might not really be very familiar with decision making. And although all the questions in decision making are broadly inference based, but you also need to know some standard rules about decision making because last year, CLAD did end up asking, not last year, in 2024, there was a decision making passage. And I think most of the students had actually faltered there itself. Anybody who ended up not doing well in logical reasoning was because of that decision making passage. So all the questions here, some of them I've labeled as easy because right off the bat, you can eliminate the remaining three options, right? The way some options were framed, they just seemed very ridiculous or absurd in nature. But there were some for which you might have felt slightly perplexed, and you do need some understanding of, basic decision making rules, all right, which is not to go for extreme choices, not to go for options that talk about postponing, delaying a decision, not doing anything, and just waiting if the solution comes about. So you're not supposed to choose such options, right? So overall, this was an easy to moderate passages. I do have a feeling that a couple of you might have actually scored full marks here in this passage because I think that's possible. But I think here, with respect to this passage, on an average, if you're able to solve four questions correctly, that's okay. But make sure you do analyze the solutions properly so that you can use the same learnings in the other decision making passages, should they be asked in the mocks. All right. We'll focus on the second passage, which I think was a little bit of a relief compared to the previous passage. It talked about Kerala's development model. Language of the passage was easy. I don't think, despite it focusing on socio-economic policies, there weren't any numbers, stats, or figures mentioned. But the level of difficulty, again, is easy to moderate. It wasn't entirely easy, right? There was a central theme-based question, question one, which is easy. There was an inference based question, again, on the moderate side of things. Another inference that was easy. But then there was a weakening the argument. You have to undermine the argument. So I think that would have been possible. That would have been just a very confusing question for some of you because I feel that a lot of students still struggle with strengthening and weakening the argument based questions. So I've labeled it as easy to moderate. And then again, there was another direct question, which is inference based, another inference based question. So a lot of inference based questions throughout the logical reasoning section. But overall, this was an easy to moderate passage. If you end up, solving five questions correctly, that's okay, right? We'll now focus on the third passage, which according to me has been labeled as moderate to difficult. And even when I was going through the passage, solving these questions correctly took me slightly longer compared to the time it takes me to solve the other questions. All right. It talks about lessons not learned on Trump and the Department of Education. The first question title of the passage is a moderate level passage. If you want, you can also label this as a difficult passage because I'm dead sure there must have been a couple of you who would have been really confused between two, three options. They sounded quite similar. But the way the options had been framed, every wrong option had some distortion, which wasn't really visible. So you have to be very alert, very vigilant while solving the first question of this passage. Then we had an inference-based passage, which was of a moderate level, maybe solvable also. And the third question to me, I think was really difficult. It was of a moderate to difficult level, analogy based, right? And the options were not easy. Maybe for a couple of you, if you felt like skipping this, I think you would do the right thing, right? So question three is skippable, in fact, because it will take you some 3 4 minutes to solve this question. It doesn't really make sense, especially if you solve this incorrectly. And then the rest two questions were of a moderate level only, inference based. And the last question is important because very often, we keep talking about double negative question times also, right? So again, there was an example and several options were mentioned. There is a possibility a lot of you might not have been able to solve question six correctly also. So maybe if throughout logical reasoning you had to skip questions, you could have skipped two questions from this passage, right? And the last passage, Alpesh sir had already talked about it. It was a logical reasoning based arrangement set. This was on the easier side, right? A full six scorer, right? Once you get the arrangement correct, every other question will follow suit automatically. So, on the whole, logical reasoning also, I would say, was quite moderate as far as the level of difficulty is concerned. And a good score would be close to 18, 19, if more, it's better, right? And a good attempt rate would be 20 to 21 only, right? So, having said that, we're done with today's analysis. Hope you found the analysis helpful. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Bye bye.